Welcome back. Paul Stanton here. So I'm really excited about the lesson we're doing today. We're going to start looking at the life jigsaw for each of the particular elements. So today we're looking at fire, and you might have been able to tell by my outfit I'm in a red fiery energy and got fiery flames in my t-shirt, and because I am a fire dominant element. So this is a really exciting part of the course. In this particular lesson, we're going to go on with a life story and talk about the life journey for each particular dominant element. In other words, what is your journey based on whether you're fire, earth, metal and water? And we're going to do a video on each of them. So we're going to start off with the fire today, mainly because that's the first element that after the bigger picture. It's really the first aspect of creation on earth, it's fire. So the exciting thing about this part of the course is we're going to be able to put different parts of the jigsaw together. So it's going to really now see a bigger part of the jigsaw, and hopefully that your life jigsaw is going to make more sense. I've talked about a lot of this in my book, and under each of these next few lessons on each element, I'll give you the pages of my book, Understanding Your Life, relating to that particular element. So, if you're not clear on your element yet, your dominant element, this is going to really help you. These next few lessons are going to really help you get clarity on the nature of each element, and that hopefully will get you a lot clearer on which dominant element you are, because it's a very important part of helping to know who you are. So this is a framework, part of my metal energy, my systems is providing frameworks for you guys to make this simpler and so you can understand it. So these are the points that I'm going to relate to, these 4 points for each element. So today we're going to do it for fire. And this is going to help you look at you as a fire person, or if you're not a fire person, it'll help you understand fire people. And you might think they're a bit crazy because they're not like you if you're an earth person or a metal or water. So hopefully this will give you more understanding about your perceptions of those types of people. So let's look at the first point, the dominant element, if you're fire. The first point is, what is your role in creation? A very important aspect of knowing who you are. And, I'll be referring to the flow chart over there, the flow of creation. And if you look at fire, as we've talked about before, is about visions, it's about spiritual connection. And because if you look at the mother element of fire, the element before it, the element before fire is wood. That's the big picture. That's the integration of everything. So the mother element for wood of the big picture feeds fire. So fire dominant people are very much about visions. They have visions for where the world's going to go. They have visions for particular people. That's why quite often fire people can be holistic healers, or they can be visionary people working in politics, or writers, or they can be visionary people working in companies to help to see where the company's going to go. So vision people tend to have a look at the bigger picture, and because they're connected to wood, and they know the why, they know the reason why things have got to happen. Because fire energy, in terms of the role in creation, is a lot about change. Because what does fire energy do? It burns things, and it changes the nature of things. So fire people are very much about seeing the visions of why things need to change. And therefore they, it's quite often we talk about fire people, they have a burning desire to do something, or they're very fiery natured, and these people can have a very fiery personality. And, I've been labelled as having a very fiery personality. So the fire people, role in creation is very much about bringing through visions to the planet, about seeing the big picture where the Earth is going, which obviously now is very important given that, we talked about Module 1, Earth is going through a major change in terms of a shift in consciousness. So that's the role of a fire person. To help things change, and sometimes that can be challenging for people, which we'll come and talk about in point 3. Second point is, what wisdom and abilities and personal strengths do fire people have? Well, obviously they have strong vision. right? Because they can see, they're very intuitive, like it's that inner third eye. So they're very intuitive. They just tend to know what's going on because they can feel it with a bigger picture. Because they're quite connected to the bigger picture and the spiritual aspect of life, they're quite often multi-dimensional people, and they're quite often seen as quite magical because they work with different dimensions. So, for instance, for me, like I work a lot with people doing past life regressions, and working with people who have passed over. So helping people connect to relatives that have died, because I can feel the energy and connect to people who have crossed over, or connect to the visions of people in past life experiences. So they can be very magical, and that's why they can be quite holistic in the way they heal. So the wisdom about seeing, so a lot of their abilities is about spiritual connection, their ability to sense things. So a lot of their personal strengths is reflected in their ability to help change and to help the world change, because they're visionaries and they've got this burning desire to spark things off to make things change, right? The fire people, yeah? So this is wisdom and personal strengths of fire people. And remember early in my book, I gave charts which indicated the personal strengths and wisdom and abilities of each of the elements. You can go back to my book on that, and I'll refer to that, the pages of that also underneath this video. So what challenges, issues and obstacles do fire people have? Well, because they bring through visions, one of the biggest challenges I see that fire people have, and from my experience, is people rejecting their visions. And it's like the Chicken Little story, the animated cartoon Chicken Little, who saw the sky falling and no one believed him. And so Chicken Little was definitely a fire person. And that's the energy of fire people. It's a challenge for them is they can quite often see things that other people can't, both on the bigger picture and for personal situations and people. And sometimes it can be challenging for fire people to know how to share that, because they can see things, but sometimes people aren't ready for it. And that's a challenge of having their visions rejected. So quite often, in their life process, quite often they have traumas early in life around being rejected. And it's all about not feeling as though the world is listening to them. That's one of the biggest challenges. So they sometimes therefore have issues around expressing themselves, which I did as a child. And they have issues around not feeling part of the world because they can see a multi-dimensional world. And whereas a lot of people in the consensus reality are living a very physical type reality, thinking and not really relating to concepts of energy and multi-dimensions and beings and non-physical beings, yeah, which fire people can see. So one of the main obstacles, therefore, for fire people is about trust. And a lot of fire people, a lot of clients of mine are fire people, they tend to have obstacles around trust because people tend to reject them. They have issues around support, and the world's not supporting them, or the family's not supporting them, so they tend to create life circumstances where they don't feel supported. And the obstacle's about learning to trust their own abilities, to trust the visions they're having, to trust that what they are seeing is relevant for the planet. So that's one of the biggest obstacles and one of their struggles, and we talked about the struggles, in your life story, and the second step of going down on the J curve, after your trauma, you have struggles. So a lot of the struggles for fire people early in life is around rejection and trust and being supported, being seen as different, being seen as crazy and not fitting into the world. So that's quite often can be the challenges for fire people. And I call that your SOS, right? Your story of struggle, yeah? A little sad person here. So therefore, what are the main lessons to learn, in terms of the life story? We go through trauma, we have the struggles, as I talked about, you have emergencies, and then it's about reconnecting to who you are and knowing how to share what you learn. So remember that step and going up on the upward part of the J curve in your life story, is about reconnecting to who you are, and that's about changing your perceptions of reality and learning how to manifest your essence, to be your essence. So, and this is what I mean by the lessons to learn. It's your story of strength. It's what gifts you've learnt in terms of what you've learnt on your journey, your life story. So what tends to be the story of strength or the gift of awareness for fire people? What are the lessons they tend to learn? Well, let's relate back to the flow diagram here. One of the big issues for fire people is around being connected to the bigger picture. You know, because sometimes if they feel their visions are being rejected, they'll actually disconnect from the bigger picture and they'll live in a smaller world. They'll sacrifice themselves and not really connect to their visions. And that's quite often why they wear glasses, because they reject visions. Yeah, and visions they have for other people. So ironically, fire people who are visionary people tend to wear glasses more than anybody else. So if you're wearing glasses, there's a good chance you're a fire person. Yeah. So if fire people block wood, right, and now we can relate this to the destruction cycle we talked about in Module 2. If they block wood and wood tends to be weaker, then as we talked about in this destruction cycle, water will overpower wood. It's like a flood, and the water will flood the trees and it'll put out their passion. You know, water puts out fire. So what tends to happen is that if fire people tend to block the bigger picture and not connect to their spiritual visions, then they tend to be very emotional, and so fire people can drown in emotions, and usually that can be quite often emotions of sadness and emotions of hopelessness and even depression, and they're quite a few of the emotions I felt as a child as well, and quite often they feel angry because anger is an emotion related to the wood element, right? Generally anger is related to not connecting to your bigger picture. So if they block their wood, they can be very emotional people. So obviously the message is as a water person, if you're very emotional, the lesson to learn is you've got to really connect to your bigger picture. Stay connected, yeah? Because quite often a lot of fire people will do is they like visualising. And that means that they've got to spend time visualising. And, you know, like when I was growing up and at school, I'd sit there and I'd visualise and people would tell me I'm for daydreaming and go, yeah, but I'm visualising. But that's actually part of your life. You've got to spend time visualising. So give yourself permission, you know, per your mission. Yeah, give yourself permission to visualise and sit there and daydream. That's part of your purpose. That's part of creating is sitting there and visualising. Yeah, not doing all the time. Yeah, so to really connect to your bigger picture, you've got to meditate. You've got to learn how to really connect to your bigger picture. That's one of the lessons, is knowing how to connect to your bigger picture. And otherwise, water will put out your fire, put out your passion. Yeah? Now, the other major element about for fire people is if they block their child element. The child element is the element after your dominant element. So for fire people, the dominant element, the child element is earth. And earth is about doing and being in harmony. So for fire people, one of their big lessons to learn is around knowing how to ground their visions in harmony. Because quite often what fire people can do is they can actually be in their little fantasy world in the future, and they can sort of visualise their things happening in the future, and living in their little fantasy world of their visions and not ground them. Yeah, that can be a lesson to learn. Is for fire people is how do they ground their visions, and of course, helping connect to earth people and knowing how to do that in harmony, to know how to share your visions in a way other people will listen to them. Knowing how to share and speak your voice, speak your visions, is a really important lesson to learn. Because remember, when I talked about the 5 elements, the child element tends to be the dominant element that you're mastering this life. So for fire people, you know, they're mastering the earth element, the element after them. Now, if they don't ground their visions, if they're weak in earth, right, they're not really connected to the earth, they're in the future and living in their little fantasy world, fire will overpower earth and fire will actually burn metal, as we talked about in the destruction cycle. Now, what that means is that fire will burn their systems in their life. They won't have, things won't seem as though they're working. And the reason is because they're not in harmony. They'll be creating a lot of conflict in their life. So a lot of the lessons for fire people is if they actually got conflict in their life with people or in work or in situations, it's learning to ground yourself. And it's knowing how to actually reconnect to the earth and bring through your visions in a very harmonic way. Otherwise, you're too fiery, in other words, and you just tend to burn systems, and that could be burning other metal people. Yeah. Now, of course, if fire people just block their visions, they block their fire energy, they block their spiritual connection. The other destruction part of that's going to affect them, if fire is weak, then as we talked about in the destruction cycle, wood is going to overpower fire, and wood is actually going to block earth. Yeah. If they block their visions, what's going to happen is too much wood for earth, because it's actually some of the wood is not being burnt, because that's what fire does. Fire burns wood. So it's like that comment, I can't see the wood for the trees. So this is what happens if you block fire energy. So fire people can't see the wood for the trees. What happens is they're going to feel if wood is too much wood for earth, they're going to feel overwhelmed. They're going to feel, oh my God, and because they're seeing too much and they're not knowing how to ground it, and they're just going to feel totally overwhelmed in their life. So if as a fire person you feel overwhelmed, it's because you're not really connecting to your visions, and you've got to just go back and reconnect to the visions that you have for your journey based on your particular life circumstances. And this is where different parts of the course are coming together. It's about, okay, so what have been my particular life circumstances? I got you to look at in Module 1. My particular culture. What has been my particular family dynamics? What have been my particular passions in my life? Yeah, that's what you've got to really look at. Like for me, it's about a passion about being empowered, and passions about knowing how to fit into the world. Because our issues I had in my life circumstances, in my culture and my family when I was younger. So I'm really passionate about helping people visualise how they can be powerful by reconnecting to their essence, and how they know they can fit into the world by knowing their story. So, it's looking at your life circumstances, and it's looking at your life story that I've got you to look at in this module so far, about looking at the traumas you've had and looking at that particular challenges and issues that you've had. Yeah, looking at the particular wisdom and abilities that you've got. See, I'm a very strong medical intuitive. I have very strong visions for particular people about what they can do in their life and how they can reconnect to who they are. So other people, fire people, can have very strong visions of the whole planet, and it could be in politics, or like Nelson Mandela, or it can be particular visions in terms of writing, or it can be particular visions working in a particular company and knowing where a particular company can go in terms of how that company can relate to the bigger picture. So you've got to really look at your life circumstances and your life story, what traumas you've gone through, what struggles you've had, what emergencies you've gone through, what particular ways you've just reconnected to yourself, what you've discovered on your journey. They're your gifts of awareness we've talked about in your life story. Is, what have you discovered in your life? I've discovered how to reconnect to who I was. I've discovered how I can use my higher abilities and connect to energy and learn how to bring energy through and help other people connect to energy and know how to utilize that in the way they create. So what are your gifts of awareness that you've reconnected to by reconnecting to your essence in your life story? So as a fire person, you've got to really now go away and look at bringing the different parts of the course together, your life story and your life circumstances and the bigger picture that you perceive on earth. And seeing it your life story and now connecting it to what I've talked about as a fire dominant person and your likely journey about rejection and not having your visions validated, and issues around trust and issues around knowing how to ground your visions with harmony. Now you've got a lot of detail of fitting together, and hopefully you can start to see the jigsaw fitting together now. So isn't that exciting? So now it's really putting the jigsaw together. So as a fire person, I suggest to go away and read those pages in my book, Understanding Your Life, and really go now and start putting different parts of the course together. This is a really crucial part of the course. Now, if you're not a fire dominant person, you're dominant in earth, you're dominant in metal, or you're dominant in water, now you might have an appreciation of the journey or the jigsaw of the life of a fire person, what they're trying to do when they're putting their essence together to try and bring their visions through. So, the exciting news is, next lesson, we're going to look at the earth jigsaw. For an earth dominant person, we're going to go through the very similar framework to do it for an earth person, then the metal, then the water. And as I said many times in this course, you might want to look at this video a couple of times to really get all the details, to really sit with it, give yourself time to sit with it, to really connect to your energy and really feel that if you are a fire person, all of these things I've talked about in this lesson, how they fit together for you. And what ultimately is, what are your gifts of awareness from your essence? What is unique about you? What is your unique wisdom and abilities that you're bringing together as a fire person? You might be a fire person, but you might be in a different culture and have a totally different role in visions as to me. We're all different. That's where our life circumstances are important, and our life story, what we've gone through, are important in understanding us as a fire person, if you're a fire person. Exciting, really exciting to share this information. This is a model I've worked with and really refined, and putting it together with different parts, and that's my vision, is how I can see how different parts fit together. So I hope you've really enjoyed this lesson. I hope it sparked you, it's opened up your fire energy, even if you're not a fire dominant person. I'm looking very excited to come and look at Earth and seeing how we can help Earth people become more harmonic. Look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Until then, bye for now.